Somebody will.
Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, our distinguished guests, a very good morning from Riyadh, the capital of culture. My name is Faisul Abbas. I'm the editor-in-chief of Arab News. Allow me to say a few words in Arabic. صباح الخير أصحاب السمو والسعادة والمعالي. نستأذنكم في أن تكون هذه الجلسة باللغة الإنجليزية لرجاء استخدام أدوات الترجمة. Distinguished guests, we have just heard from His Highness the Minister of Culture. However, this is a conference about cultural investment. So I have the distinct pleasure of inviting two of probably the best two people in the kingdom that can talk about culture from an investment and a business perspective. Please do join me in welcoming on stage His Excellency Khalid الفالح, Minister of Investment in Saudi Arabia, and His Excellency Faiصل الإبراهيم, Minister of Economy. Your Excellencies, a very good morning to you. Let us talk business.
Okay.
So, Your Excellency Khalid al-Falih, perhaps allow me to start with you. As the Minister of Investment, with a very diverse portfolio, you have worked in the energy sector. Perhaps one of the immediate thoughts that come to mind is when people think about investing, they think of rather other industries, petrochemicals, mining, technology. Not many people associate investment or return on investment to culture. What is your thoughts on that perception?
شكرا فيصل. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وأسعد الله صباحكم جميعا. وشرف كبير لنا أن نكون في هذا المؤتمر مع هذا الحشد من قادة الرأي والثقافة والإعلام أيضا مهمين. احنا كنا مستعدين نتكلم بالعربي فthey ask us to switch to English. Happy to do that. I want to start by acknowledging His Highness Prince Badr, who is our first Minister of Culture, who literally has taken this sector under the guidance of our inspirational leader, His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman, literally from zero to hero. Because, as you said, we never thought of culture as a sector, let alone investing in it. And we all know how far we've gone. But we'll talk today about the opportunities ahead to continue to build on the success that has been made. So thanks to Prince Badr for convening us. And I want to thank him specifically for putting investment as the theme of this conference, because ultimately people have to invest. They have to invest resources, human resources, financial resources, IP and knowledge. They have to invest their connectivity and access to market. And we have to think of the linkages also between culture as a vertical and the other economic culture the sectors, which I'm sure His Excellency, my colleague Faiصل الإبراهيم, will eloquently address. But well, let me just tell you at the personal level before I talk business as you asked me to do. If we use the analogy or the metaphor of a human body, we obviously see the tangible, which is the body, the muscle, the head, all of the content of this human body, and we try to improve it through our health, exercise, diet, and all of this. But I think the most important investment that a human being does is in the soul. It is in your heart and in your mental state and emotional being. Are you happy or are you not? Are you fulfilled or are you not? Are you centered or are you not? So you may find someone who is the most healthy person, but if they don't have all of those characteristics, they obviously are nobody, despite having the best body. And I think for a society, certainly for a country, it's the same thing. You can invest in the best infrastructure, you can invest in the best industry, you can invest in the best agriculture, you can have people who work like machines and have jobs and full employment, and your balance of pay is positive, and your fiscal position is good, and your monetary system is good. But if you don't have a soul as a country and as a society, again, you're no country. Nobody will want to come and visit, your people will not be fulfilled, and at the end of the day, you're not achieving the ultimate objectives of having a good economy, which is to have happy people, to have continuity in your life. So that's just sort of how I see it from a high level. But as a ministry switching to investment, we want to be able to enable every economic activity that has the potential to create value for obviously the macroeconomy of the nation, to have the opportunity to create value for the investors and for the citizens, and the culture, which includes the creative arts. It includes festivals and events, and we all know what, under the direction of His Royal Highness, by starting the seasons, especially the Riyadh seasons, what kind of movement we have created, not only nationally, but certainly regionally and even globally. The Riyadh and the Kingdom has become a cultural hub, and in a couple of weeks we will be starting the 25-26 Riyadh season, amongst many others. Of course, we have the film festival in Jeddah, and we have many events that have created a lot of value. We have today over 50,000 investors in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Saudi and international, that are categorized as investors in culture and creative categories. One of our main objectives as a Ministry of Investment is, of course, to facilitate foreign direct investment. And I can tell you from nothing, 6-7 years ago, we have today over 500 So it is accelerating as we go, growing at double digit. $500 million of foreign investment that is already 1,700 of the 52,000 international licensed and registered global investors. I'm happy to say to this crowd that we have 1,700 international investors that are investing in culture, creative arts, events, entertainment, all of the things that we classify under this very broad definition of culture. And last but not least, and again, this is, I think, encroaching in the area of His Excellency, there are linkages across sectors. There is no sector that is sort of protected by itself or firewalled from other sectors. Every sector, to a certain extent, impacts others. But there are linkages between culture and everything else. We would not be able, as a kingdom, to get to quality international investors, tourists in the kingdom, if we don't have a vibrant culture scene. So culture impacts education, it impacts digital and everything around tech today and the startup scene. And certainly it impacts tourism, which is going to constitute as a minimum 10% with 150 million local and international visitors. So we do culture investing for its own, but we also do it because of all of these linkages. Last but not least, we are conscious and focused of creating a triangle between investing by investors, by government support and government direct investment in the sector. And the third category, which I think is so important, and for all of the influential and high net worth individuals, I think this is an area that is going to get, we have also civil society, we have the third sector of the economy. So culture and the creative arts is one where the three blend in together: direct investing, government investing and support and facilitation, and القطاع الثالث or the third sector, which is...
Your Excellency, I just want to make sure I get the figures correct. You've said $500 million in direct investment into culture and creative industries, and 1,700 foreign investors.
Investors. طبعا most of them are small. They're entrepreneurs by the nature. They're artists. They are. So these 1,700 are not the big multinational, but we go after them. We nurture them. We have initiated within the Ministry of Investment a special track for attracting startups in tech, but also equally important startups in culture and the creative arts. And we want to create unicorns in this area as much as we want to create unicorns coming out in deep tech or entrepreneurship, but it requires special nurturing. And this is where the partnership with the Ministry of Culture, with the Culture Fund, which His Excellency is the Vice Chairman of, and the other, and the Entertainment Authority, all the other players, and the Ministry of Tourism, look at these value chains and mechanism to nurture and support.
Allow me to get back to you on that, Minister Al-Falih. I also want to talk about the opportunity for local investments and the work that you do with the Ministry and the Investment Fund. But allow me to turn now to His Excellency Faisul Al-Ibrahim. So now that we have established that there is a return on investment, perhaps as somebody who spearheads the Ministry of Economy and Planning, perhaps you could give us a bigger picture or a better understanding of how this fits into the whole ecosystem. How much jobs does it create, for example? How much does it help build a brand that could help promote other Saudi brands internationally? Anything you can tell us on that aspect?
Sure. Thank you very much, Faisal. And I second His Excellency Khalid on what he said in the beginning about this event and about the leadership of His Highness Prince Badr and the importance of this sector. I'll start maybe by commenting on what Toumi said in the beginning. I think the creative sectors globally represent $4.3 trillion. Toumi mentioned a different number. There's a range of numbers. And His Excellency was pointing out in the green room that that's 4 times the size of the Saudi economy. So I'll start off by saying this is serious business. This is serious investments. This is serious job creation. And for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, this is pivotal for the first wave of economic diversification that we witnessed, that relied on the new sectors: tourism, culture, entertainment, and sports. The Kingdom's economy did very well in a very short period of time when it comes to exported services. We went from a negative balance on tourism to a positive balance in a very short period of time. And this was fueled by culture, whether it's the events or the products or the various activities in the economy. The cultural component in other sectors, like His Excellency said, we're very much tied to culture. I'll maybe talk a little bit about what culture means for us. So other than fueling or catalyzing the first wave of this diversification story, it also serves as one of the building blocks of a soft infrastructure that will attract capital, it will attract people, innovators, academics, thinkers, investors, entrepreneurs to the kingdom. To the point that in these first formative years of Vision 2030, spending on the cultural sector is equally as important as, and maybe even more important, than the spending that we've saw historically on the budget items that received the most capital in our annual budgets, whether it's defense, sports, defense, health, or education. And it's paving the way for future growth and multiples of growth. We were talking a little bit ago about every dollar spent in creative sectors is represented by or sees about $2.5 of a multiplier effect in the economy. And we see that. Culture is also important for job creation. It serves as a demand that requires supporting industries that create jobs, but also it creates jobs directly. Today we have about 35,000 people working in cultural sectors, and the government and the Ministry of Culture and the ecosystem is training actively around 5,000 people, in addition to sponsoring a lot of students in the thousands to get many degrees in these sectors since the start of Vision 2030. On top of that, these supporting industries are products that we export or value that is created here that differentiates the user experience in the kingdom, that attracts tourism towards this kingdom. It's the value driver that is sometimes makes the difference between a traditional product and a Saudi product. On top of that, we have many other things that culture stands for, but one of the things, and I'll allude to what His Excellency mentioned a little bit ago, is something that differentiates Saudi Arabia. When we meet people, when people come to the kingdom, no matter what you have the discussion or outcomes of these meetings, people will always remember being in Saudi Arabia, will always remember what we wear and what we offer and what we discuss and what we eat. All of this is very, very impactful. Let's keep in mind His Majesty King Abdulaziz, when he met FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, on the USS Quincy. He actually, not a lot of people know this, but if you look at the pictures, he actually put or requested that his tent is put on the deck of the barge, of the vessel. And that sent a strong signal of pride in this culture that His Excellency alluded to, and I think that made waves in terms of the outcomes of these meetings. So it's something that differentiates us, that we should be proud of, and the values that culture represents are things that turn into products. People remember generosity, and today are seeing an increase in the quality of the user experience when you interact with the kingdom, whether visiting it or being met by people from the kingdom. And there are many examples. Another one that I think is equally important, Korea's example of exporting culture is something to look at. Korea started along the same journey as the kingdom did with its development. It diversified a little bit faster, but it got to a point where it's exporting cultural products, to the point that here today in the kingdom we have Saudis who have learned Korean just by consuming these products. This is a sign of soft power and influence, but also we've seen that their market share of global creative industries market grow significantly in a short period of time. In the kingdom, this is an opportunity, not just for what we can consume locally, but for what we can export. Right now, the target is for the contribution of the culture sector to triple by 2030, and I think a big part of that will be driven with what we export.
Thank you for those insights, Your Excellency. Actually, it aligns very well with what nation brand expert and the person who coined nation brand, Professor Simon Arnold, says that countries that have a stronger nation brand or a more like nation brand trade at a higher value. And out of the 6 pillars, actually, that form that nation brand, he ranks culture as the highest differentiator for countries. I want to ask you, just to build on that last point you mentioned, Your Excellency, triple the sector by 2030. In terms of jobs creation for Saudis and for expats coming to the kingdom, what are the predictions of how many jobs that ambitious target can achieve?
So right now, I think the contribution is to the GDP is halfway through towards the target of the Ministry of Culture. And today we have about 235,000 people employed. I think the direct employees will increase. The number of museums, we're talking about 600 museums, the number of projects that are pillars in the cultural sector, whether it's the growth of Al-Ula or the completion of Dir'iyya, or the many other projects in other sectors that have a cultural component, will only grow in terms of order of magnitude. So I'd say we'll have to look at the details, but I'd say it will not be shorter than tripling that 235,000 and maybe even more. And that's other than the indirect impact as well.
Absolutely. And just to put this into context, and I know both your Excellencies have mentioned this, we literally did start from scratch, and perhaps one of the privileges of being a newspaper editor is we draft the first draft of history. So I remember in 2019 when the Ministry of Culture was established, and I don't think anybody would have imagined that we would have reached where we are today and where we're headed. But let me build on that point, Minister Al-Falih. So far, it has been government-led, and I want to ask you about the role of the private sector, investors from the private sector, in building the cultural economy. And what can your ministry do to help empower them and also lessen the burden on the Ministry of Culture?
Well, I think one unique aspect about culture, given the broad spectrum that culture covers, from things like museums and libraries to things that actually make substantial money, like cinemas and movies that go global, blockbusters that make a lot of money, to fashion, high-end culinary food that actually draws, is that there are different degrees globally of government support that's required. So we're not unique that the government had to seed the sector, incentivize it in the beginning, and as this movement happens of people getting interested, whether they are the creators of the various verticals within culture, from visual arts to culinary, to music, to films, to festivals, you name it, the government can start withdrawing, and the economy itself starts seeing this as a business opportunity. So the Ministry of Culture, with all of its instrumentalities, the various commissions that His Highness Prince Badr has set up that specializes in supporting each of these subcategories within culture. His Highness reached out to us early, 3 years ago, and said, Khalid, let's join our two ecosystems and do a strategic partnership. So we signed an MOU in his office a couple of years ago, and that MOU allowed us to be an extension of the Ministry of Culture where it comes to activating the business and the investment aspect of the ministry. So one of the things we did as part of our national investment strategy is do a sector investment plan. And this sector investment plan analyzed all of the subcategories of culture, what it requires, which one is profitable, which one is not, what are the regulatory hurdles, what are the incentives required, who are the potential investors in Kingdom, what is the funding gap that exists within the sector, and how can we bridge that funding gap in a way that allows the government to do less of direct investing, as you mentioned, and not to continue forever as a government-led. And I have to say, within the last 2 or 3 years, amazing things have happened. We have developed jointly, led by the Ministry of Investment, 40 investment opportunities, which are today loaded on Invest Saudi, and I invite all of those watching us to please go and log in to Invest Saudi and look at those opportunities. Some of them have an IRR. We predict through our pre-feasibility studies that we do before we load anything on Invest Saudi above 20%. So they are quite profitable. And some of them are going to be infrastructure for tens and hundreds of investment opportunities that will come after. So production studios, for example, for some of the creative arts are some of the investment opportunities. Some of them are funding mechanisms. And by advertising, I'm happy that today in this conference, Oda Capital will be announcing a fund of initially 150 million riyals that invests in some specific categories of creative art. So a movement towards investing. I quoted some of the numbers of FDI as well as total investors, including nationals and regional investors that are registered with us and with the Ministry of Commerce. I think this flywheel that has been created, that started moving between the Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Investment, the National Development Fund with the Culture Fund is very powerful. I think it's not at full speed, obviously, but it is going in that direction. As I mentioned earlier, we have expedited licensing and registration. Our investment law that came into effect less than a year ago aims to eradicate, remove completely all hurdles amongst investors, but by working with the Ministry of Culture through the strategic partnership that we launched with Prince Badr, we're able to hear directly from the stakeholders. This sector investment plan I mentioned within the ministry, and I've seen them with my own eyes, there were tens of workshops done with potential investors to hear from them what do they need, what is it that the government, and it's not always funding. Sometimes it's regulations, it's offtake, it's demand, it's linking them with tourism, with event, and sometimes they need the value chain to be continued. So some of them will say, we need an event management company that specializes in cultural events. So we go and advertise for this and we create that. So getting the value chain from end to end, well thought out and built through this process of push and pull to create integrated value chains and to allow the linkages with the other sectors is something we're trying to do. But let me just end by, we will never be, this sector and some of the subsectors within it will never be 100% investment only. It will always need government support and facilitation, including some funding, and it will always aspire for and hope also for donors, philanthropies, foundations, and the third leg of that triangle I described. And here I want to just bring out two names out of probably many that I don't know. Art Jamil is a very successful model of an organization by a corporate entity, Abdul Latif Jamil, that has dedicated a lot of resources, and they have planted a lot of seeds and enabled a lot of entrepreneurs and startups in the area of art. Abdul Latif Al Fawzan Foundation has also dedicated a lot of resources for architecture, specifically Islamic architecture and architecture of mosques. So it's not limited to one type. And architecture, of course, is part of our culture scene in Saudi Arabia. And there are hundreds of other niche areas that I'm sure many people are passionate for. So as people think of their legacy, what to do in the future, I invite them. And you see it today, the Ford Foundation, the Getty Foundation globally, what Bill Gates is doing. So I'm hoping that also our very generous and capable people who have the wealth, alhamdulillah, and have been blessed, to also dedicate some of their foundations that they will leave for their legacy to the broad, to whatever they select within the broad area of culture.
Fantastic. And I just want to maybe have a quick follow-up on that point you just mentioned, Your Excellency, because before I give the final word, as we wrap up the session, to His Excellency Faisal Ibrahim, any specific enablers or incentives for those who want to invest in the cultural sector?
Thank you for asking. Incentives are, of course, always, but definitely now, as we plant the seeds and water them for the sector, is absolutely necessary. And it's been recognized by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. He allocated budgets, both cash and non-cash incentives. And His Highness Prince Badr started a few years ago when we created the National Incentive Committee to say, let's start with film, global film producers, which will create and catalyze the film industry in Saudi Arabia. So we co-designed together a rebate system for global film producers who typically go to other locations. And for the first time, the last few years, we have seen global film producers come to the kingdom and take advantage of this incentive scheme, which is rebate on their spend in kingdom. But I think other than those major global productions, and some of them are blockbusters, saying this was filmed in Saudi, which is important, I think, for changing the stereotype about Saudi Arabia as being closed. I think it created a big movement within the kingdom for local film production, and today you see it in Netflix and many sites that have Saudi film production. Then there was Ignite. Ignite was a program for the digital content, and digital content and culture are complementary in a big way. So we launched a big incentive package as part of the Ignite program, which went into animation, short videos, and many components. Now, this week, and I think it will be announced, expected today or tomorrow, there is an incentive package that His Highness just asked us to do for all of the other verticals within culture. So it will cover culinary, it will cover fashion, it will cover music, it will cover visual arts, all of this, and performing arts. All of these will have grants and incentives that are going to be available, mostly targeting startups, and of course complemented with the existing incubators that I talked about, the training academies, which are also a big incentive to create the talent pool that can join foreign and domestic investors. And we will continue to taper and change and calibrate our future incentive package to fit the need as we grow further.
What a very positive way to start the day. Half an hour have went very quickly. Your Excellency Faisul Ibrahim, any last thoughts before we conclude this session?
Sure, I just want to comment maybe on what His Excellency said. I think in the beginning, the government was investing in loss leaders, if you will, to signal to the market, locally, globally, the presence of new sectors and more opportunities. But the government will continue playing a role in absorbing the inefficiencies that require government intervention for the private sector to grow. And the reason I mentioned that jobs will triple, the number of jobs that in the vision need to be created over the next 6 years are double what we created so far and at a higher quality. And this will come through the continuation of government work and intervention, but also coming through reaping the rewards of pushing the private sector in these directions. Private sector does it more efficiently, and we'll see a lot of opportunities in front of them. Another point that I wanted to mention is that for us, culture and the Ministry of Economy is about mainly 3 things. Our objective under Vision 2030 is to accelerate diversifying the economy, and culture played a significant driver role in this regard in the first wave that required the growth of these new sectors, tourism, culture, entertainment, and sports, connecting a lot of these sectors together, but also paving the way for, as I said, soft infrastructure to allow for industries and more complex products to be produced and exported from the kingdom. Number 2, it's about economic participation. The number of people who got out of their houses to have jobs or to work or to be entrepreneurs, to get a chance to work in more established enterprises, to grow, to later on invest and consume. This is very important for the economy. It signals a healthier economy. And it's not just about people taking on more jobs. It's what they're learning in these areas. Culture is at the middle and at the heart of creative sectors that will be the link between our challenges in productivity and our productivity-led growth story. Even in esports, you see a link between the consumption community and the creation community. And this talent that's there is helpful in other, even more complex sectors, including defense later on. Third point is more about the connector role that culture has played. We talked about diplomacy, we talked about connections with investors. This is really important. I mean, I think His Excellency knows a lot of people we meet. When we meet with them, they said, yes, I got introduced to the story because I met His Highness Prince Badr, His Excellency Hamid, His Excellency Rakan. It's a lot of people we meet who met or learned the Saudi story from the culture work that they do and how it interacted with the quick and significant and deliberate growth we're seeing in this sector in the kingdom, which is, as we mentioned in the beginning, serious business.
Excellencies, thank you so much for a brilliant start of the day. Thank you to our audience. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. That was brilliant.